let's check in on this interview that disgraced Tucker Carlson. I don't know. I couldn't think of it. Disgraced pundit Tucker Carlson did with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is now an endorsee of, is that the word? He's endorsed Donald Trump, and he's a part of the Trump team. Apparently, he's going to help with the transition, which means he's going to help pick sort of who's going to run the government, at least at the beginning, and help with that transitionary process if Trump, God forbid, were to win. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you might remember, seemingly pitched to both Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign and to Donald Trump's campaign the idea of, hey, you promised me an administration position, and I'll endorse you, which is him showing just how little principles he has. Because if you could both endorse Trump and Kamala Harris, you either wouldn't know a principle if it smacked you across the face, or you're being rather dishonest and flimsy in your principles. But here is a more lighthearted moment, then we'll get into some more important ones. I'm just really easily, call me a snowflake lib, triggered now that Kamala Harris has been the nominee for so long and people still don't pronounce her name correctly.
If they're interested in any of these issues, which I suspected they were not, because Kamala was still an empty slate. Kamala, was an empty slate. So,
she's pronounced it both ways herself, so it's okay.
I want to respect people and give them,
yes.
Tucker, what is Tucker's deal? Why does it look like he's staring at Jesus? Not a statue of Jesus or represent. Jesus is there now. And he gets to witness it there. Look it. Wow. Anyways, point is, did you notice how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said Kamala and then goes, oh, wait, sorry, I want to be respectful to her. Let me pronounce it correctly. Kamala. And then Tucker Carlson goes, she's pronounced it as both. No, she's pronounced it as neither, because neither of those is how you pronounce her GD first name, okay? It's Kamala. Like a comma, not a period, but a comma, la. Okay? Just throw out comma, you'll get the rest, I promise. And actually, this is the time. I have to show this clip at least once a month contractually. Tucker pronunciation. That's a tough word to spell on the fly. But here's the clip that I was thinking of.
Tucker, can I just say one quick thing? Because this is something that will serve you and your fellow hosts on Fox. Her name is pronounced comma, like the punctuation mark la. Kamala. Okay? Seriously, I've heard every sort of bastardization
so
of
what?
that. That's how it is, Kamala.
Okay.
Well,
but
I think it's out of respect for somebody who's going to be on the national ticket. Pronouncing her name right is actually not, it's kind of a
So
bare
I'm
minimum.
disrespecting her by mispronouncing her name unintentionally. So it begins. You're not allowed to criticize Kamala Harris or Kamala Harris or whatever because Kamala Harris.
It's not whatever.
Okay, look, I unintentionally mispronounced her name,
question.
but I love the idea that she's immune from criticism. So let me restate my question.
Who said she's immune from criticism? Nobody. You did. Nobody else. Criticize away. Just when you're doing it, I kind of want to know who you're talking about. Because Trump has been saying Camila. I don't know who Camila is. There's no person in this. I don't know anyone who's in politics. Personally, I can't think of someone right now who has the first name Camila. Camila Cabello, I know her. But that's it. And Tucker goes, she's pronounced either way with his gaze of 1,000 miles. Okay. Well, we've conquered that, so let's move on. Again, it's like for the rest of this segment, we can just call Bobby Kennedy, right? Instead, Bubby. We'll just do Bubby. Bubby Kennedy. I've heard him pronounce it both ways. Who knows?
In some way. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a bunch of realignments, political realignments, about 4 or 5 throughout American history. And I think we're going through one right now with the Democratic Party and with both political parties really changing in this very dramatic way. And you and I talked earlier about the transformation of the Republican Party into the party of environmentalism.
Yes.
And, with the Democrats.
No. Bubby, no. Okay? We're not, Bubby. We're not doing that today, okay? I understand it's fun, cosplay, right? Pretending like something. No, we're not pretending like the Republican Party that is still trying to figure out where it stands on if climate change is a thing, is the party of environmentalism. Oh, Bubby.
That I talked earlier about the transformation of the Republican Party into the party of environmentalism.
Yes.
And, with the Democratic Party has one environmental issue, which is this carbon orthodoxy, which ends up benefiting, the oil companies and BlackRock and Goldman Sachs with offshore wind and carbon capture, $100 billion carbon capture projects.
Yeah, I've heard people say they knew Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Years ago, and there was something respectable to, and he was an environmental lawyer. He's done environmental related things. And even talking about which powerful interests are going to try to lead when it comes to renewable energy and how do we make sure we're doing that transition correctly. There's, as I say so often, a perfectly reasonable, logical conversation we can have. But we need, as a part of that conversation, if it's going to be productive, people who have at least an ounce of seriousness or knowledge about the subject. And you left that at the door, Robert, whenever you said that the Republican Party is the party of environmentalism. I can't even get it out of my mouth. Trump celebrates the fact that he deregulated a bunch, in part with the EPA, so that companies could just dump toxic substances into rivers that then we need for so many things. It's just like a 4D chess version of environmentalism, okay? We are in the home stretch to 1 million subscribers. If you want to support in the effort to get us there, you can do so by clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already, to continue getting the word out. Thank you so much. Back to the video. All right, more.
Because they didn't trust the people. And, they're the party now of censorship. And
How can you have a democracy with censorship?
you cannot have a democracy. They're absolutely incompatible. And everybody knew that. Everybody, you and I were raised reading Orwell and Aldous Huxley and Robert Heinlein and Alexander Solzhenitsyn and all of these other books that were part of classical literature that was taught in every American classroom. It said the first step to totalitarianism begins with censorship. It's the first step down that slippery slope. And there's no time that we look back in history and say the people who were censoring speech were the good guys. They're always the bad guys.
Yes! He's so close. I actually think if Kamala had come to him and said, I will consider putting you in my administration, which, by the way, I know this bothers people, and maybe she could have talked with him and it would have, I don't know, but there's something so wonderful about him going around now, given his unfortunate reputation, and saying, isn't it so terrible that Kamala Harris refused to meet with me? It just sounds great that she saw this scam from a mile away, right? Because clearly whatever he pretended to believe in trying to initiate a conversation with her was bogus, because he can throw that in the dumpster for Trump. So there's nothing legitimate about it. But think about saying censorship, being for censorship, is always a sign of authoritarianism and of sort of the historical bad guys. Great point. Interesting. Let's engage with it. But then again, who are we talking to? Because some random person says that, I go, oh, wow, let's talk. Let's talk about the literature that you've read up on it. And, Kennedy citing some interesting examples there. As he's on a podcast talking about how he's endorsing the guy who said the government should come down hard on MSNBC. As he's endorsing the guy who routinely calls the press criminals because they dare to report on negative things about him. That's a more overt promise of censorship if he gets into power again than you could ever imagine. That's as overt as it gets. But then he's talking about often Twitter deciding to do something with their private platform. And again, let's have a debate. What should Twitter be doing? What should we pressure them to do? What should their rules and regulations be? Or even examples of the Trump administration did this too, going to social media outlets and saying, hey, we think this violates your terms of service. Could you take it down? Sometimes the social media outlets say no. Sometimes they say yes. The Biden administration has done this as well. We could say, oh, that particular interaction was inappropriate. All those things are on the table, except they're not when you're the one sitting at the table, you dishonest buffoon.
Or, another then to handpick a presidential candidate without any elections, to basically get rid of democracy in order to save it, and handpick a candidate who in 40 days now has not given a single interview on any media outlet. And I think about when my uncle and father would think about that. They prided themselves on being able to go on debate. It was the centerpiece. The whole function of democracy was to anneal ideas in the furnace of debate and have them rise up in the marketplace of ideas. And to the idea that, and we had this British tradition of Churchill and the others and the House of Commons.
Yeah, right. Debate's good. I agree. But she did her interview now. I don't know when this premiered 7 days ago. So I guess right before the interview happened, and they're gonna do their debate. And that's that, I guess.
Ross Perot ran. He was running for 10 months. He was on mainstream media 34 times interviews. And you remember him. It seemed like he was on Larry King every week.
Of course.
And I got, in 16 months, I had 2 live interviews on all of those networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, 2. They're just basically mouthpieces now for the DNC. And there was this obligatory litany of defamations and pejoratives that were used to describe.
You know what's interesting about that? First of all, hey, be more interesting. Maybe they'll invite you on more. I'm kidding, sort of. I don't know, maybe. But more so, how many times was Biden on MSNBC or CNN during that period of time when he was the candidate? I can tell you probably less than 2. So even that's interesting. They might have been considering that the mainstream media wasn't getting interviews with Trump or Biden, barely. Now, Fox News has Trump because they have their little, love fest going on there. But the other legacy outlets are not having either on much. So I bet Biden wasn't on any of the outlets you call. That's why people were criticizing him too. But from their perspective, wouldn't they be oversampling you if they started bringing you on a bunch, and then their audience was getting way more of you than other people? But the reason I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually fits into MAGA nicely is because he also has this everything that doesn't go well for me has to be because everyone's wronging me and the media is against me. Even though you could say that the media, I hate that term because it's just the widest net you could possibly throw, but sort of your big 5 or 6 outlets are very responsible for Biden and his need to step off the ticket, his polling dropping, because they did nonstop coverage, especially after the debate, of what was of concern to a lot of people. But again, a lot of coverage about it relating to doubts about his candidacy. If they were a mouthpiece of the DNC, they could have just ignored or whatever, but they're not. And we see this over and over. I mentioned in a different segment, but we won't go through it all again. If you really analyze on numerous issues the way things are covered, the mainstream media has this insane double standard and grades Republicans with a different set of metrics than Democrats, that actually makes it easier for Republicans to get away with a lot of things that Democrats don't. And I know if you're MAGA, no, it's the opposite. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to change your mind, but here's our last clip.
Trump, no one disputes that. The polling's really clear on that. So if you're the Harris campaign, kind of a win, right, to get some alignment with you, why? Even human curiosity, you'd think, would compel her to want to meet with you. Like, take a meeting. Like, why do you care? But she wouldn't even talk to you. I think it's very weird.
It's weird, but not, I mean, I can't stress this, not being able to give an interview. I mean, your whole life is in public life. That's what you do. That is the currency. Right. I give, this day is a really slow day because I'm doing one interview with you. But on a typical day, I do about 7 or 8 interviews, some days 10 or 12. And I do that every day, and I've done that for 16 months. If anybody who wants to go, I mean,
I thought no one wanted to talk with you.
have a list now, 4,000 people want to interview me, but I'm interviewing as many people as possible. So I want to get my voice out, my vision out, my concerns out. And it's incomprehensible to me that you would be in public life. And President Trump does the same thing. He's not scared of an interview.
No, he likes it.
Theo Vaughn.
Yeah.
He's done you. He's done.
Theo Vaughn? Did you watch that interview? That's an example of a hard-hitting interview. Theo Vaughn. Theodore Vaughn.
In public life. And President Trump does the same thing. He's not scared of an interview.
No, he likes it.
Theo Vaughn.
Yeah.
He's done you. He does anybody. He does people who don't agree with him. He's not censoring you.
No.
He's doing, he's talking to reporters who write.
See, okay, I'm done with you, Bubby. See what he does there? Censorship means Trump not taking an interview, meaning he uses that term interchangeably. That's not what that term is supposed to mean. When you say, oh, I'm being censored, you're assuming probably, at least if RFK Jr. is going to be benching you so much, there's this serious, often governmental infringement of your rights. He's talking about when people say, oh, no, we're not interested in interviewing you because nobody wants to hear from you. Sorry. That's censorship to him, right? Or Tucker Carlson, in a hypothetical where Trump says, oh, I don't want to interview with Tucker, which is Trump's right. He can do either one. That's censoring Tucker if he doesn't want to do an interview with him. That's not what that term means. Gosh. And that's why he thinks he's so censored. I talked to this girl at a bar. She didn't want to talk to me. She censored me. She took away my free speech. She wouldn't talk to me. So fair. Okay, there's an important point, though, that I was supposed to make somewhere in here about what he was saying. Yeah, Kamala Harris did an interview since... Oh, okay. And then this idea that Trump, he's not afraid of anything. He can talk to people who agree with him, disagree with him, and he's a brave, strong man. Do you remember the last time he put himself in an oppositional interview? Think. Everyone think in their brain. So not a Fox News interview where Sean Hannity quite literally does everything he can to try to help Trump, where he's now gone back like 3 times. Just promise everyone you're not going to be a dictator, please. And Trump will never do it. Not that, but instead an actual hard-hitting oppositional interview. It was the NABJ, where Trump was so frazzled by someone asking him tough questions, he repeatedly called them nasty. I think even conservatives said that was a disastrous night for him. And he questioned the race of his opponent. If that's admirable, or if that's what you believe Kamala Harris should be doing, I'm really happy she's not, okay? I'll just leave it there. Let me know what you thought of all of that in the comments. And if you want to support this show and get extra content, you can do it by clicking the join button below. And if you want to donate to Kamala Harris's campaign, you can do that by clicking the link in the description of this video.